Ages ago, when the world was still young, the gods established the grand city of Mahabra. At the center of the city was a golden temple of peerless beauty. Within that temple, the gods placed a gift to all mortals, the throne of the king, so that any that wished to could sit upon the throne and ascend higher to become like the gods. Gradually, the gods of old departed this world, for they were too pure for man to comprehend, leaving mankind alone with just the new gods that had ascended on the throne of Mahabra. But the new gods were not like the gods of old. Over time, their power would wane, and newer gods would rise up to take the reins of humanity. Due to the endless cycle of the rise and fall of the new gods, man's progress remained stagnant. Contrary to what the new gods promised, the cruelties of the past remained. Then in the year 1590, at the cusp of yet another new cycle, fate would twist ever so slightly. The four mortals that were destined to sit upon the throne had their lives cut short, never to rise as new gods. This left a gap in history to be filled, but what would rise to fill that void? In the kingdom of Rondon, a poor unfortunate child was abandoned in the oldest, cruelest prison in all the land, known as the Dungeon of Fear and Hunger. She had no known past, no name, and no future. She would inevitably suffer a terrible, painful death within the blood-stained walls of the ancient dungeon. As she tried her best to scavenge any food she could, she was captured and placed in a cage and left to waste away. A horribly deformed, ugly guard would come and rattle her cage often. He delighted in her terrified cries. But this torture was just the opportunity that the girl needed. She took a chance and managed to grab a key from the oafish brute's belt. Once the dim-witted guard finally left, she unlocked the cage. After some time wandering the twisted halls of the crumbling fortress, she saw the light of the main entrance. She ran as fast as her starved body could carry her. She was finally out. Tears of joy ran down her cheeks. But her ordeal was not over. A thick, impenetrable fog rolled in. She could not see a thing, but she could hear the barking in the distance. She had no choice. She had to turn back to the dungeon of fear and hunger. After seeing the sunlight for the first time she could remember, the girl's eyes had trouble readjusting to the thick darkness of the dungeon halls. She hesitated to light a torch, fearing another guard would see the light, but she had no other options. The dungeon's darkness was somehow worse than before. The thought of being trapped here all over again was too much for the girl to bear. The girl did not know who had spoken to her, but she found the words strangely comforting. She felt like she could push forward again. Deja vu gripped the girl. She knew the odd floating creature was dangerous and needed to be avoided. That bed looked so inviting. The monstrous guard never let her sleep while she was locked in the cage. She managed to fall asleep instantly, but could not stay asleep for more than a few minutes. A terrifying feeling woke her before she could get any rest. The girl wanted nothing more than to run back to the entrance like the wounded man had suggested, but she knew it'd be pointless for now. Deja vu again. The big dead bug with the ugly man's face was somehow familiar. The blood and gore squishing between her toes made the girl feel slightly sick. The voice helped her again. Maybe with the voice she could survive and escape. The girl was a fast learner and capitalized on another bear trap. The girl trusted the voice despite the smell. The girl was nearly overwhelmed with fear, but she called upon her new knowledge. With just a thought, a fiery explosion tore the giant freak's arm off. The feeling was exhilarating. For the first time ever, the girl was no longer afraid. Combustion was powerful, but she needed to be fairly close to use it accurately, so she only needed to keep her distance and incinerate the brute one piece at a time whenever he got too close. The girl was overjoyed. She could finally defend herself, something that she never even dreamed was possible. The voice had not just saved her life, but changed it forever. With that guard dead, for the first time in a long time, the girl felt safe enough to eat some mushrooms and rest. The girl was confident enough with her newfound power to face the tiny, deformed man. But she was not as confident she could get close enough to the armored guard she had crippled earlier to safely use combustion. He still had too much reach with his long sword and morning star. The men wearing black robes were chanting ominously. She did not understand what they were saying, but instinctively knew she must stop the chant. The girl felt bad for the man nailed to the statue. She wondered if the men in the robes would have done the same to her. The crow-faced monster felt different. The girl was afraid like never before. She knew that combustion would not be enough to kill it. She had to run for her life. The strange man seemed afraid of the girl for some reason. She didn't want to bother him. The girl was quickly learning that combustion would not be enough. There were strong monsters like the crow, and fast enemies like those dogs that she could not kill before they killed her. At least the dogs couldn't fit inside the entrance to this underground passage. It was difficult to avoid the weird purple things in the tight spaces created by the overgrowth. The girl just hoped that she could kill it quickly. The purple thing's touch didn't hurt, but each time the girl's heart began to beat faster and faster. She was beginning to panic, and her head was throbbing. She needed to do something to calm her nerves. A strange vibration reverberated through the whole of the dungeon as the girl sliced the massive gross organ. It made her feel uneasy. The strange vibration happened again. It was stronger this time, but the voice had not been wrong so far, so the girl ignored her growing unease. The crow found her again. Its eyes seemed more wild and intense than before. Most children would find the doll's appearance eerie, or maybe even chilling, but not the girl. Her eyes widened in excitement as she held the doll, and for the first time in her life, she smiles. For just a brief moment, the cruelty of the dungeon melts away, as she gently pets the doll's hair.
Смех птиц ловит от цвипанья воделс. Мать, но свелось цвипан. Notch and the lost cvipet Louise, less in Louise, yes, cvipet Zebra. Censorship would not have been able to hear. Collapse the heal you. Stand bort I the earth some week.
The girl gripped her severed arm. An intense, searing pain radiated all the way up to her neck. Was she going to die? Did the voice lead her astray? The girl didn't understand why the voice wanted her to come here. Instinctively, she had tried to use a small combustion to cauterize the wound, and bandaged it as best she could, but she was still bleeding. She was rapidly becoming lightheaded and scared. The girl was amazed. Both the bleeding and the pain stopped. She wasn't lightheaded from blood loss anymore either. What other secrets could she learn from the mysterious voice? Another new spell filled the girl's mind. She glanced at her missing hand. She hoped that magic could prevent her from losing another limb, or even regrow the missing one.
the milk, enough some she lives in this growth and here with killer and is already.
The odd bluish man watched the girl as she searched for food and supplies, but they didn't seem to care. While the cave dwellers were aware of the girl that was wondering about their village and rummaging through their belongings, they were largely disinterested in her or what she was doing. They all seemed to be in a trance, mindlessly staring into the darkness. The massive creature was both awe-inspiring and unbearably dreadful. Its huge maw was like an abyss, and the girl could not help but stare. The cube was heavy and warm. Each side was adorned with intricate arcane symbols that faintly glowed and pulsed. All at once, the formerly entranced villagers sprung from their stupor and swarmed after the girl. They were feverishly drawn to the cube that she had stolen. The villagers didn't seem to be pursuing her any longer, but a disturbing gnashing sound filled the dark cavern. A strange sensation filled the girl. The taste was repulsive at first, but soon it became rather palatable, perhaps a side effect of Grogorov's influence. Many specters roamed the winding caverns, but unlike the specter in the thicket, they were slow and aimless. The girl found it strange that the kind alchemist did not seem to notice the voice, but she didn't dwell on the fact. Even blinded, the terrible crow managed to graze the girl with its rusty maul. A direct hit would have been deadly. The girl bit her hand until she drew blood. That small amount of blood dripped to the ground and rapidly began to expand until it formed a large, faceless construct. Next, she called upon Sylvian and imbued the blood golem with pheromones, forcing the blind crow to solely focus on it, allowing the girl to slowly eviscerate the crow with flames and poison. Thanks to the advice of the voice, the girl had done the seemingly impossible. She had slain a chosen servant of an old god. The girl called upon Sylvian to heal her wounds again, but was beginning to feel mentally drained. She would not be able to rely on this method continuously. The blade-wielding ghost from the thicket continued to pursue the girl to reclaim his sword. She still lacked any means to defeat the specter, however, and was forced to flee again. Despite the swarm of biting insects, the savage creature landed 2 shallow bites. The girl would need a method to deal with the infected wounds. Simply healing them would not be enough. She needed a way to disinfect them, and soon. Once again, the voice's guidance proved invaluable, but not just in slaying the dragon, for the dragon's soul also cleansed the girl's many infected wounds.
hampus is hähtänne pone, elpake.
As the girl opened the delicate book, she felt the voice begin to speak through her. She whispered words she could not understand and were not her own. The gaze of the new gods left the girl frozen in place. It was both unsettling and oddly familiar. She did her best to ignore these feelings. Even though the girl had only seen the sun through the thick fog, its rays were warm and comforting. Conversely, the bright sun that hung over the city of the gods was cold and instilled a feeling of deep malaise. As if waking from a dream, the girl found herself standing in the mines once again. She knew her brief sojourn was real. The sickening nostalgic feeling in her stomach told her so. The supplies she scavenged from the city of the gods returned with her, confirming she was really there. The girl had made incredible strides, even killing many terrible beasts and monsters, but the consistent mental exertion from performing blood magic was mounting.
Hier viel nog snot. Zijn praat de time is nog snot. Wees nog niet wat is blue. Clark.
The voice was right. She didn't even know who he was. She just had to keep moving. This guard was different from the others. It was much faster, more savage, and erratic. Its sudden movements were difficult to avoid. But worse, the girl was both physically and mentally fatigued. The battle was fierce. Casting loving whispers twice was very taxing. In an effort to ease the mental strain, the girl begins to develop a bad habit. Just by crossing the ancient threshold, the girl felt something change. Something deep inside of her was not the same anymore. She knew she could not be like she was ever again. It was freeing, in a way. The girl quickly made her way through the crumbling tomb. She avoided the shambling undead, not because she was afraid, but because they were just beneath her notice. The specter had followed her even here. The girl was beginning to wish she had never taken the sword. The ghastly apparition was becoming increasingly persistent, even managing to slash the girl a couple of times before she could escape it. The wounds were shallow but painful. If the voice had not told her to take the sword, she would have discarded it long ago. The city had come to life again, but it was unnatural, almost like an artificial imitation of life. It was more tangible than when the girl read the passages of Mahabharata, but it was still not quite real. The girl found the listless shades that roamed the city streets very puzzling. They were not quite like the spirits that she had encountered before, more like visible echoes. The longer the girl wandered through the crooked Mahabharata streets and back alleys, the more she felt at home. After a while, the world past the gates of the Tomb of the Gods started to feel like an illusion. It was another bug, like the one in the basement. The girl, without thinking, began to speak to it as if it was the natural thing to do.
His name of Ender Thauer was lost here far.
The man in the cloak had been mangled beyond recognition. The girl assumed it was the work of the guard that just attacked her. She sort of felt bad, but a soul was a soul. Not even the sunlight deterred the relentless specter. The girl was overjoyed to be rid of the ghost, but she was more excited about her new skeleton friend. She could not wait to make more friends. The girl's new ghoul friend made an excellent distraction and did not mind taking hits to protect her. She was happy to have reliable friends. She had always been alone. The girl was becoming very confident. She didn't think anything would be able to hurt her anymore. Not with the help of her undead companions, anyway.
Hier er wel en wat was er niet iedereen hier het research the turn up. Zo wat er in de research. Is echt op ieder knurst hier. Sneerig van meel.
The girl did not come out completely unscathed from her battle with the massive guardian, but defeating such a huge enemy filled her with even more certainty that nothing could stop her now.
Dan mocht het wel los, dat meel. Dan mocht het wel met de druk. Here, really now, Froey.
There were no shades milling about near the Temple of Torment. The girl wondered why that was the case. It seemed just so empty in this part of the city. There was a stillness in the air surrounding the creature that was chained to the wall. It made the girl feel a little uncomfortable. The girl held up a soul stone. She didn't understand why nothing was happening. She was confused. She had sacrificed many such stones before. She could not bring herself to do it. The ghoul was her friend. He protected her.
Ja, we love is it. Look at what all of my shelf for their parts on me.
Reluctantly, the girl heeds the voice as tears well up in her eyes. The chains of torment spring forth with a life of their own, piercing the ghoul's flesh and raising it into the air. The girl did not want to fight the tormented one in this cramped space. She'd rather kill the new god in the main hall of his temple. The girl learned a hard lesson that sometimes sacrifices must be made, but that realization did not comfort her any. She missed her friend the ghoul and wanted to hurt the new god that was bathed in his blood. She was determined to make the tormented one pay for her loss. As the defeated new god slowly sank into the pit, some of his blood began to float in the air. It swirled and glowed as it drifted closer to the girl. Before her eyes, it suddenly hardened into a small crimson stone and then lowered itself into her hand. The ugly creature that was chained to the wall had freed itself. It was malformed and looked like it had been turned inside out. The girl could tell that it thirsted for blood. But a well-placed slash from the sword the girl took from the specter tore the thing's heart to shreds before it could taste any. The twisted monster held a powerful soul. The girl intended to put it to good use. The girl still missed her old friend, but was happy to make a new one. She hoped that he could carry on where the ghoul left off. Not so long ago, the girl would have been terrified by the talking blade, but not anymore. She knew it was a tool to be used, and happily gave it to her newest skeleton friend. The girl could feel that she was being watched. It felt like the gaze of the new gods from when she read the passages of Mahabharata. The girl was yet again amazed by the knowledge of the voice. Was there anything that she didn't know? The Enlightened One assumed a new, massive form, but the girl was not intimidated or dissuaded. Valtiel established a telepathic link with the girl and meant to flaunt his power and browbeat her, but he got more than he had bargained for. When he peered into her mind and soul, he was overwhelmed by a primal fear like nothing he had experienced ever before. What he saw was an unfathomably deep, dark well of power with no bottom in sight. He wanted to scream, but in his current form he couldn't. All he could do was lash out and pray that he could somehow manage to kill the girl. The mutilated corpse of the Enlightened One falls into the darkness of the inner sanctum's pit, but then a tiny but brilliant light slowly emerged from the darkness. It was an amber stone that contained Valtiel's enlightened soul. The girl was able to avoid the deformed, childlike creatures on the way in, but there was no avoiding the bloodthirsty things this time. She would have moved on without killing the horrid little goblins, but they left her no choice. The girl did not know where to find the Endless One, but she was very tired. She would let her skeletons keep watch while she got some rest. The girl did not know where she was or how she got there, but she didn't have time to think about it. The old lady appeared unassuming, but the girl knew better. That thing had the presence of a new god. It must be the Endless One. The new god's form was horrifying to behold, but that wasn't what concerned the girl. What bothered her was how familiar the god's presence felt. Strangers still, unlike the other new gods. It didn't seem like Nilvan was fighting with all of her strength. She was holding back and just going through the motions as if she didn't want to kill the girl. The girl awoke with both a beautiful blue gemstone in her hand and troubled feelings in her heart. What was her relationship to Nilvan? The girl had no understanding of what a mother was. She had always been alone in the dark as far back as she could remember. Her new prize, the Endless Soul, gave her the same feelings of sadness that the dead man in the catacombs did. She left those sad, confusing feelings back in the dead man's cell, just as she would leave these feelings behind in the Tower of the Endless. It seemed to the girl that the broken, nameless guardian only wanted to be freed from his thankless duty. He simply wanted to rest, and she would help him. The girl did not expect the dominating one to be a kindly, frail old man. It seemed time had taken a toll on him. Would all of the new gods lose their power the way he had? The girl changed her mind. Francois was not kind, just old and bitter. All the more reason to end him and the reign of the new gods. The girl had never felt anything like this before. An intense cry rang through her mind. The entire city shook. It was like the final death knell of something old and terrible. This marked the end of an era, and now the birth pains of a new age could begin. The Golden Temple in its former glory was beautiful, possibly the greatest wonder in all of the world. However, the girl was unimpressed. The golden splendor just didn't appeal to her the way she thought it would. But she wasn't sure why. Maybe something deep inside of her changed. Francois, the dominating one, had a stronger, more commanding presence than the other new gods. But the girl was not afraid, not anymore. She was not the same frightened girl that was locked in that cage. She had overcome every deformed monster and false god the dungeon had to offer until now, and the arrogant pretender currently standing before her would fall like the rest. Molten silver and gold flowed like blood from Francois's mutilated corpse. The two metals swirled and mixed into a magnificent perfect sphere and drifted slowly to the girl.
When? Hoe hier veel wat aan te zitten. Ja, hör er flimmer. Hoe hier of niet was zijn nog zo in her walk push net to the nurse.
The girl was confused. Why did the voice stop her from taking the throne of Mahabra? Wasn't the point of all this to free herself from the dungeon? Wasn't killing the monsters and gods, and then ruling over the dungeon herself, how she would gain her freedom? Or will she be able to leave the dungeon after finding the last soul? Surely the dogs and fog could not stop her now. But she had come this far by listening to the voice, so she decided to continue to trust her.
Ja, Ines Eloise, Wen, ja, Liebel, Send her out the first block, this cowboy.
The blue villagers were not happy to see her, but the girl wasn't worried. They could not stop her from reaching the altar of darkness. The gaping maw of the abyss itself was waiting for her. The girl, for the first time in a long while, felt scared. What she was looking at was not some petty new god. It was something much older. There was no going back, no escape any longer. The girl could have taken the city of the gods for herself, or simply left the dungeon once and for all. But instead, she chose to delve deeper. Maybe that was a mistake, but she wanted to know what all of this was for. She needed to know who the voice was, and what was waiting for her in the deepest, darkest depths of the dungeon. Countless deadly traps lined the walls and floors, but they could not stop the girl. Her determination was too strong. She was completely unfazed by any injuries that she sustained. She would simply heal them. Her willpower was forged in the unrelenting darkness of the dungeon. She would not break. The crow had returned, and its form was even more distorted than it was before. Its lifeless, soulless body was held together and compelled to move by the last traces of the old god it served. The abominable two-headed monster would do its best to muster one last futile stand against the coming new age. There was a seemingly endless supply of hideously warped guards that were more maw than man. They were faster, stronger, and more bestial than the many guards the girl had killed before, but they were merely a nuisance. They posed no danger to the girl anymore.
Ascension self-fulfilled pressure.
It was another mage, bigger and uglier than the other two, but it was quickly ripped apart by the girl's skeletons with little effort. The girl could feel that she was close to the bottom. The path ahead was paved with death and suffering. Without any hesitation, she climbed the heaped-up corpses as she would any set of stairs. This being could only be described as great and terrible. This feeling was destruction incarnate. The girl knew this feeling. She felt it before. She felt it every time she prayed to Grogaroth, every time she summoned a blood golem, every time she raised the dead, and every time she cast combustion. But what she felt all those times was just like a tiny trickle of water. But what she faced now was like a vast ocean. As the battle raged on, the girl came to understand something too big for her to fully comprehend. This was not Grogaroth. She was not standing face to face with the true primordial old god. It was just a tiny, insignificant sliver of the real thing. This immense power was just a fading echo, just a trace that the old god left behind when he departed this world. Never before had the voice frightened the girl, but now she was very afraid. The overwhelming power that was the traces of Grogaroth was being swallowed up and overshadowed. The thing and the girl locked eyes. She was completely transfixed. The girl's body moved on its own as the incomprehensible thing before her rapidly grew in power. It was a god, a true, ascended god. This was what it was all for. Everything had been leading up to this moment. All of the girl's pain, all of the hardship she had overcome, all of her suffering, all of her fear, all of her hunger was for this singular moment. A strange second presence appeared. It felt like it could rival a new god. No, it was even stronger than that, but it utterly paled in comparison to the newborn god. But with the second presence's arrival, the situation was ever worsening. The girl didn't know if she would survive this. All she could do was trust in her instincts and fight. The girl shared the pain of the newborn god, a pain so deep and intense that she could not understand how she was able to endure it. The god continued to grow and change, as if she was absorbing the very essence of the darkness. But to make matters worse, a third new presence had emerged from the darkness. The girl felt like she was wasting away. She had become so very hungry. The newborn god was starving too. The girl could feel it. The girl was afraid. This was unbearably hopeless, but the newborn god was also afraid. They were sharing this terrible feeling of indescribable fear. Finally, the second presence sunk back into the darkness, but it made little difference while the newborn god still loomed large. Then the newborn god changed again. Its suffering was ever increasing, and so was the girl's. The very substance of the newborn god was suffering, and the girl suffered along with her. Then a fourth strange presence arrived. All the girl could do was just barely hold it and the third one back, while she bore witness to the further ascending of the newborn god. The third presence had succumbed and was absorbed back into the darkness. But the girl was unable to feel any relief in its defeat. All she could feel was the suffering of the newborn god. The girl's mind was beginning to buckle under the relentless pressure of the newborn god's existence. Then finally, the fourth presence disappeared, but the end was still not in sight. The newborn god had now fully ascended into a being of immeasurable power. She was pure fear and pure hunger distilled into its most fundamental concept. Then yet another strange presence manifested, but it was hardly noticeable, so close to the ascended god's divinity. The girl locked eyes with the very embodiment of fear, and in an instant, all of man's fears flooded her mind. Now she could see it. She could see the true shape of fear and hunger. The girl fought with all she had, and just as she thought she couldn't go on, the god stopped, as if she was withholding the full force of her divinity. Then the fifth presence faded into nothingness, and the skeletons turned and walked away into the darkness. All that remained was the girl and the god.